Peace and love, my awesome people. So good to be here with you. At least I am feeling better enough to get out of my pajamas and come sit with you again. So that's positive. The sun is out here and it's a beautiful day outside. Whether it's chilly or not, the sun is keeping my toes nice and warm. I love days like that. So thank you so much for being here with me, and I'm going to go ahead and finish reading Gift of the Red Bird. I am near the end of chapter 5, and there's just a little bit of chapter 6, and I'm hoping that I have the energy to make it to the end of the book for you today. So without further ado, and without wearing myself out with other tads and bits of information, which you know I like to do, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and start the reading for you today. So thank you so much for being here. Blessings of peace and love and goodness. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, we are on Thursday morning, and this is the end of her trip. This is the end of her vision quest. It must be nearly 6 a.m. and I am waiting that one last agonizing hour before the dawn. If I could physically get behind the hills and make the light appear, I would. I want to get out of here and back to Lodestar. I want to take a shower, read a book, and sit where there are cushions. I want to touch friends and talk to those who love me. I ache for human contact. Endless waiting. And then there it is. The light has come. I thank the night and the canyon and everyone. I thank the dawn. I really thank the dawn. I empty my remaining water on the soil and thank the earth for protecting me, leaving no trace that I've ever been here. The evidence will be inside of me. The first drops of rain begin to fall as I am packing up my tent. But I am so glad to be going back to Lodestar and that I don't care about getting wet. I only worry that the stepping stones I need to get me across the creek bed will be too slippery for my passage. Putting half of my gear under a tree, I head off with the first load. Only 2 loads for the return trip. The jugs of water are empty. My first trip over the creek bed is okay, but when I make the return trip, the rocks are already treacherous. I pick up my remaining gear, the rain is steady now, and walk toward the creek for a second time. I already said my goodbyes. It's time to go home. 10 feet down the road, a deer stands in my path and never moves. Even as I come closer, I think of how trusting these animals have been as I've lived among them. How did they know I was safe? The deer and I look at one another for a long time. I say to him, "Brother." Eventually he returns, and I go on my way. Eventually he turns, and I go on my way. When I get as far as the infamous bunkhouse, I decide to leave my tent and sleeping bag there until tomorrow. So with just my personal belongings and the camp's walkie-talkie, I head toward the dam and the road to Lodestar. The red bird suddenly flies in front of my feet, and I stop and smile. There is great emotion in my heart, but I take no second looks back. I want us both to be free. And I remember what I've learned about clinging. By the time I cross the dam, I am wet from head to toe. "74 hours since leaving Lodestar, Hungry, thirsty, and dirty, I swing open the gate and run for the door. I made it. Inside, I walk around shouting, I did it! I shed my clothes, wet and covered with the earth, and take the longest, dearest shower of my life. When I'm clean and dry, I leave a message at home that I'm safe and that I've lived through it all. I drink some juice and try to eat a piece of fruit that I can barely swallow. My physical hunger has become a herald of my hunger for God. I stand for a long time with a strawberry in my hand, weeping. Finally, I take a blanket and a book to the couch and settle down gratefully on the cushions. This is the moment I've been waiting for. This is what I've dreamed about, but my mind sees the words on the page and can't take them in. Instead, I see a bird fly past the window, a hawk circling the canyon, a fly buzzes in the room nearby. 4 days ago, I would have noticed none of them. Now, I wonder who they are, and if they know I can speak their language. How am I going to fit back into my old world, when the world of trees and rivers and birds tugs at my consciousness too? There is the world I always knew, and yet there is another world. There is so much more. How will I live in both places? I cannot believe the feeling in my chest. It aches so deeply with all I see. Something in me has truly changed. I feel it welling up inside of me. I was foolish to think the loneliness I experienced on the quest was hard. It cannot compare with what I'm feeling now. Of course, if I want to, I can put on my sneakers and go back to the river and get rid of this crushing homesickness and heartache. I can be there in minutes. I know that is not the answer. I can postpone the pain, but I cannot avoid it. Ultimately, I have to return to the city and find the way to live in both worlds. Maybe it will take a long time. Maybe my heart will always be a little bit broken. How could I expect to feel the connection I have experienced and not also know the wrench of leaving? But it also occurs to me that home for me will never again be a structure. I have found home inside of me and all around me. Home in creation. I lie back on the couch and let myself cry out all the feelings, the exhaustion and the love. I quest for vision. I knocked and the door was opened. It is just as it is promised. You are not enclosed with your bodies, nor confined to houses or fields. That which is you dwells above the mountain and roves with the wind. That is I have a really big glare. I don't know, I'm gonna knock everything over. I have a really big glare getting in my eye there. Sorry about that. That was a quote from Khalil Gibran from The Prophet. You are not enclosed within your bodies, nor confined to houses or fields. That which is you dwells above the mountain and roves with the wind. The transition back into my city life was even harder. than I expected. It still is. My wilderness spot stayed inside of me. And its reference point is always there. It hurts to go to bed at night and look up at the ceiling. Why did we ever begin to shut out the stars? I have tugs at my heart whenever I lock up my house or my car. I remember living with only trust and no keys. Upon returning, I rearranged my schedule and my sleeping habits so I could walk outside every morning before the beginning of the workday. The sound of the birds and the smell of the air keeps the homesickness at bay. I see squirrels or chipmunks and know they are so much more than incidental creatures inhabiting a human world. I collect the feathers which I find on my path. My communion with the earth is my conversation with the Creator of all things. The conversation never stops, nor does the learning. The obvious suggestion might be, why not find a way to live in the woods? But it's not so easy. There are other lives in my V formation and obedience to where God sends me. One goes into the wilderness to be taught, not to stay. Then the task is to come out and carry the message to those with whom you live. We are interconnected. My experience was as much for all who will hear about it as it was for me. Everything we do affects all others. When we really understand that, we will begin to live differently. Thinking autonomously and separately, we will work at life as if we are islands. The consciousness we need to feel is about our relatedness. My friend Liz describes it as the universal breathing. That's what happened to me. I drew the breath. I learned in the wilderness that all life is of God. We need to listen to the creation that surrounds us. We are practiced in seeking wisdom from the study of Scripture, which is, of course, also alive. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Gospel of John. We are all comfortable seeking God in familiar forms of worship. We gather together, two or more, and honor the presence of Spirit in our midst. But too easily we begin imposing our considerable fears onto the Word and the gathering, wanting them to be controlled reflections of ourselves, rather than mighty expressions of God's power. The Word and the gathering must be as expansive as the wilderness if we want to know their truths. Each of us in our own heart must face our nakedness. When we gather only with those of like mind, or we read only the words agreed upon by the particular authorities who make us feel secure, then we find exactly what we sought and nothing greater. There is no such authority and no such safety in the wilderness. There is only God. There is your name being called and your own response. There is the awareness that human beings are stewards, not owners. We are seekers, not authorities. The only authority in the wilderness is God. God. Not an interpretation of God, just God. Perhaps that is why truth can be found there with such clarity. The wilderness taught me that wherever we live, by whatever name we are taught to call the divine, we all have the hunger. But we have grown afraid of the hunger and afraid of what other names by which God is known. We cling never more tenaciously than to the small path and religious vision that is our own, and we require the entire universe to see it that same exact way. Our human arrogance. Finally, God contained. Except that God is found in abandonment and not in fear. When the storm raged during my second night on the quest, all the other creatures immediately became a part of the storm. Save me. True to my human beingness, I had to first resist what I could not understand or control. I searched for ways to reduce my fears, mattress in the shower stall, and have the storm conform to my management. Only when I learned to become part of the storm too, replacing fear with trust, did I find what I was searching for. Human fear is the last vestige of the natural man before he accepts God's grace. By Randy Beckton. Oh, I love you guys to pieces, and I know I said I was going to try and finish this, but that was the rest of chapter 5. And yeah, I'm feeling the energy call to me. This is how we learn how to listen to our bodies. So as much as, and it can be frustrating, right? There's just tiny little bit left for you guys, chapter 6. Tiny little bit. And I really want to finish it. I really, really do. But if anything, I'm going to help you be mindful of listening to yourself. That even though I really want to finish that, I really do. I really do. That was my intention when I sat down. But, I can feel my body. I can feel my eyes. I can feel my body telling me that is enough for now. And, I trust in all things, and I trust in God, and I trust in the universe, that there is a reason why I'm not finishing the book today. And it's not just because I have symptoms and I'm listening to my body call, but there's a reason, and for myself as well, not just for you, but for myself as well, there's a reason why the story is not being finished today, a spiritual reason. So if for you, I'm sure the person that I read it for on the day that they first receive it is going to understand why, and it's going to mean something. They're going to be in a different place. Look at that sun. They're going to be in the place that they're meant to be. I'm going to knock things over. They're going to be you who is supposed to hear that chapter on the day that it is recorded. Will get that message and will be in a spiritual place that you need exactly to be in. Everything needs to be aligned right. And the same for myself. So we will sometimes receive signs, or there's certain things that just can't happen. Everything has its divine right time, and it's got to line up just right. And So not only for you, but for myself as well. So trust me in knowing that all things in divine time, if we pay attention to what our bodies, not only what our bodies tell us, but the things around us as well. So I do look forward to the next time that I get to come back on, and in my mind right now, it says that maybe later this evening on this day, that maybe I'll be sitting down and finishing that chapter for you. So who knows? I guess we'll have to wait and see and find out if that was the divine speaking to me just now. So praise God. Good thoughts and good things. Keep your head up and your mind on what you want. Think about what you want, not what you don't want. And think about goodness and healing and good outcomes and positive things and blessings to you and your children and your families' children and their families, and so on and so forth. And sending so much peace and love to you guys. And until next time, I have to fly away like the little red bird. So peace and love to you, and I'll see you soon. Thank you so much for being here with me.